Charles on from this dimension to another dimension at a higher realm than when he had come here. And what I mean by that is he left this dimension in a higher stage of enlightenment than when he entered. And I feel a sense of deep satisfaction and gratitude. I received an email from somebody that had played in a band with him telling me that Charles had spoken very highly of what I've done. But I am very, very grateful for being a part of his life and his growth, and I am sure that what we've done together will have an awesome effect as his life continues on. But, you're a human being, and you have feelings, and, it's, as a human being, it's difficult. There is a degree of bitterness, It's not only about Charles. It's about others. I mean, I've lost a mother, a father, 2 brothers, and a sister, and I tell people they're up at the North Pole that I don't know where the hell they are. But that, since I was a child, always nagged me. And I said, if there is this guy, God, up in the sky somewhere, I'd like to talk to him about this and say, man, you have screwed this up. What do you do? What kind of mess did you make? I mean, you give people friends and family and everybody's in love, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. That's stupid. And I would tell them. I honestly, I don't care. I would tell them. I would express myself. I don't think it's a wise thing. So, my mind then continued to pour over the things we've previously explored together. What the heck is it? What happened to this guy? What happened to everybody? What is the nature? It's not only hard to understand, it's hard to accept. What is it? And then in my, what happens to me, voices started talking inside of my head again, as they do with me in this 3-dimensional physical turmoil. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happens. And I'm not going to be able to provide you any scientific knowledge or scientific documentation. I'm going to tell you, you're under no obligation to believe anything, obviously. But I'm going to tell you anyhow, because of what I was told. You simply can hear this, and you can ponder it yourself. You can let it nest in your heart, or you can let it fly away. I know exactly what happens, and I'll share it with you as a source of comfort for some, understanding for others, and downright blasphemy for the rest. So what? There's 2 things that we're going to look at in the next slide. We have dying in bed, on his way out, and you have sleeping in bed. And I'm sure you've encountered people in both instances. What is similar about those 2 pictures we're looking at? They're both in bed, they both have covers and they have pillows, they're both lying down, and they both appear to be unconscious. Now, as far as relating to them, it's hard for us to relate to the top picture because we haven't died, at least in our memory, and so we don't have that experience. So we question it, and we're faced with trying to explain that experience in the top picture, and we've done that all of our lives. But we can relate to the bottom picture. We experience the same experience as that bottom picture every day. And so we absolutely know what's going on with that bottom picture. There's nothing to not understand. There's nothing to not be able to discuss and explain. We're all totally aware of it. So let us take a look at what happens to the person in the bottom picture in order to get a clarity as to what happens to the person in the top picture. Okay? Now the following is a result of a groundbreaking experiment from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. John, this is what it says. University of Wisconsin report on dreams. Brain disconnects during deep sleep. The University of Wisconsin at Madison study says, as we slip into deep sleep, higher regions of our brains take a vacation from each other, disconnecting so much that consciousness is stuffed out, and a once highly integrated organ becomes separated, according to a groundbreaking experiment by the University of Wisconsin-Madison researchers. Now, just to kind of confirm that, I had a report from MSNBC. Brain areas disconnect during deep sleep. Experiments shed light on what happens to consciousness during sleep. So what's the difference between consciousness and the lack of it? In the deepest part of sleep, the various nodes of your cranial internet all lose their connections. The brain breaks down into little islands that can't talk to one another, said the study leader Giulio Tonani of the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Okay? Now this happens to you every day of your life. When you sleep, the brain internet in your head loses all connections. It disconnects. Notice where it relates to a lack of consciousness. But in reality, and next that I see you next week, they did a study, a mathematical study, which is very interesting, and I will share it with you next week. The mathematical study said that the chances of you ever losing your consciousness. In other words, I am who I am inside of here. You all can say the same thing. I am me. You can say that. The mathematical chances of you losing consciousness ever is 0. Interesting. But this lack of consciousness that never happens is where we have to think deeply. Now, when you go to sleep, you experience different things. You see different people. It's very vibrant. You talk to people. You do things. Well, if you lost consciousness, then you couldn't do that. When you're so-called dreaming, you're aware of something and you're experiencing it. It is very clear and it is graphic. So you have to have consciousness when your body sleeps, and you know that for a fact. In other words, it is absolutely impossible to not have consciousness. I mean, your body is asleep, the brain has disconnected, and yet you're involved in all of these different things, meeting different people, doing different things, making plans, and all this. How is that possible? How could you possibly be asleep if all that's going on and you're aware of it? And that is really an interesting point to ponder. You never have been asleep. Never. And you never will be asleep because the photon does not sleep. So the point is, if your brain has disconnected, yet you have not lost consciousness because you're involved in all of these different things with different people in these dream things, say, you haven't lost consciousness. How was it? And think of this carefully. How was it possible for you to see those things? How is it possible for you to have talked with these people? How is it possible for you to have done all of these things when you were asleep? You couldn't be asleep. See? If your brain is disconnected, yet you've not lost consciousness. How is it possible? There is no brain connected here. We proved that with this. And yet you are totally awake, and your dream proves it. You're doing all kinds of stuff. You've flown in airplanes, you've ridden boats, you've gone to the store, you've talked to all kinds of crazy things. Not crazy, but all kinds of things. When you were supposed to be asleep, but you weren't. If you were unconscious, then you could not have seen these things and met these people who you consider to be in a dream. So that means you're conscious, but your brain isn't working. You're conscious, but your brain isn't working, and yet, in that state that you're in, you're able to make decisions. You say, well, I'm going to do this. Oh, let me see that. I'll take a look at that. You're making decisions with an analytical brain, yet your brain is shut down. How is that possible? Your brain is disconnected, yet in this thing you call a dream, you're planning things, you're doing things, you're changing things, you're doing everything that you do today, tomorrow. You're experiencing. Which means you're not using the brain in your head here because that's shut down. You're using the brain in your head someplace else. You have to use a brain to do things. Have you ever had a dream where you made a decision to do something, or where you said, I'm going to do this, or what do you want me to? And you're doing all this analyzing, and you're doing it without a brain. How's that possible? You call it a dream. And yet you're doing these intelligent things while your brain is disconnected. So you're using a different brain. So let's look at the two persons, one sleeping, one dying. Now they're both unconscious now, okay? Both of them, one's sleeping, one is dying. They're both unconscious. But something is going to happen. Now watch. Watch what's going to happen. The one dying in bed, the brain is disconnected. It will not reconnect. The one sleeping in bed, the brain is disconnected, but it will reconnect. There's the difference and the only difference. Both of them are in bed. Both of them are unconscious. One will return to the body when the brain reconnects. This one cannot return to the body because the brain will not reconnect. But both of them are in what you would call the dream state. The difference is this person will continue. If he's in a car and he's driving to Florida, he will continue the trip. This guy is in the dream state. He's in a car, he's driving to Florida, but the brain reconnects and he's back here, and he never knows whether he got to Florida or not. In both instances, people are unconscious. There is no reason to assume that the function for both people is any different when they're unconscious, because both of them have a brain disconnecting. The only difference is this one will not reconnect, this one will reconnect. But at the time we see them here, neither of them are using the brain. And yet they're doing things somewhere. So the one at the bottom is going to be snapped back into this realm when the brain reconnects. The one at the top will continue in whatever activity he's in. Think of what activity you were in when you were your last dream, if you can remember it. Or think of whenever you had a dream, whatever. Think of what you were doing. If your body here dies, you just continue doing what you're doing. You're driving a car. You're going to the store. You're meeting with people. You just continue it. But if it's, on the other hand, you're sleeping, when your brain reconnects, bang, that situation, that experience you're having will stop, and you'll say, oh, what a dream I had. So the person at the bottom is going to have some recollection of the activity that took place when the brain shut down. How is that possible? How can you have a recollection of something that took place when your brain was turned off. The person at the top just goes on. But since his present brain will not reconnect the guy at the top, he continues on in the activity. See? And he's continuing on in a life activity in a person who is a twin of his, and he never ever knows that his body here is dead, and it's no idea. All he knows is in his dream, he was driving to Florida, and now he's probably checking in at Motel 6 somewhere on his way to Florida. And he knows nothing about this whatsoever. Think of this. I mean, be reasonable. The brain is disconnected, and yet you're doing all these intelligent things without a brain. This is what happens. Here we have the sleeping person, he's driving a car. Here you have the dying person, he's driving Charles's truck. Did you ever see this parked out in the parking lot? This sleeping person, I was driving a red car, and I remember the dream, I passed by a supermarket, and then I woke up. There was somebody following close behind in a white car. I don't know what happened. I don't know whether that person was tailing me or what was going on. I woke up. Charles is driving around the corner in a very nice neighborhood, and he continues to drive. He's in his truck right now. You see? Because he's not coming back into this brain, so he'll just continue on with this. Whereas this person, it's trying to figure out who is the guy in the white car behind him in the dream. The sleeping person snaps back. When the brain reconnects, the person in the green pickup, Charles, was driving a green pickup. He'll continue to drive it. So where is Charles in the green pickup truck going? Since the brain will not reconnect, there'll be no interruption of the activity, and he'll have no idea that his present experience would have been a dream. You see, this experience was a dream when he was dying. But when the brain shut down, it ceased to be a dream, and now it continues as a reality. This was his reality. This reality was just as real as this, but it didn't continue because the brain here reconnected. In other words, what we think is a dream is actually our continuing consciousness, which is interrupted when our brain reconnects. Now, what about Charles and his green pickup truck? I had a lot of trouble finding a pickup truck, but I did. He physically died. He had no idea that he died. He was lying in bed in Ware Town, dying and dreaming, and his dream was he was driving his truck down this street. Well, his brain didn't reconnect, so he continued to drive it. And he's in another dimension, going on in the same way, never realizing that this was a dream when he was here. It's because it's real. You, in another dimension right now, could be asleep in another dimension and dreaming that you're sitting here listening to me. And just as I got to the good part, you woke up. So he drives his green pickup to the Hidden Meanings building, and he's going to do meditation. Now, isn't this interesting? You all have twins in the same thing. You all twins know Charles in the same way that Charles knows you. He's driving his green pickup truck to the Hidden Meanings to do the Tuesday night meditation, and you're going to be there. How could he be doing the same thing there that he did here. The reason is his atom twins had vibrated to other atoms, which were us, and we all came together. You remember the thing that freaked out Albert Einstein, and he quit because you have here you, and you have in another dimension your twin, and when you touched one, the other laughed. And Einstein said, I know it's true, but I'm out of here. I can't deal with this. Huh. Don't you see what happens here? When the atoms vibrate here, the photons vibrate, and Charles is dying, the photons, the atoms vibrate to the twin and said, it's all over here. And it's absorbed here, and it just goes on in a new dimension, in a new life. That's the way it works. That's why it's proven. You cannot kill a photon. You cannot kill an atom. And that's what you are. And they interact with one another. And they can interact with one another from one end of the universe to the other, and they're not connected. So our atom twins, and we all have atom twins, still vibrate, and they vibrate away from us, but all the vibrations continue, and the same people experience each other. Look, do you know how many copies of you and me there are? Let me show you how many copies there are. You go to sleep, and you're in a dream. And you're driving a car, you're driving a truck, or whatever, you go down to the ShopRite. That's your dream. And you meet some person you never met before. That's your dream. Suddenly, you find out your brain has reconnected because you have to go to the bathroom. You get up, you go to the bathroom. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. That was a crazy dream I was having. You go back, you lay down, and you have a dream. And it's completely different. And it's different people. You're not driving a truck anymore. You're on a bus headed for Indiana. How the hell did that happen? 2 dreams, 2 times in bed, 2 times falling asleep, and completely different. Why? Because the atom that vibrated into the twin here now vibrated into this twin, through into another twin, and on and on and on and on it goes. And as Major Bowles said, where it winds up, nobody knows. So Charles continues in his green pickup truck. Here's a picture. There it is. He's parked at his new house. This is Charles' new house where he lives now. Yeah, I got that picture. He sent me a picture. That's his new house. He's parked outside of his other house some way, just like you have your car parked outside of another house somewhere. But then the plot thickens. Charles is in this other dimension now. And he's going to go to bed tonight. And he's going to dream. He is going to dream. And when he dreams, his brain is going to shut down in that dimension, and he's going to wind up in another dimension. And if he dies here, now he's going to be here. Do you notice all this crazy stuff is scientifically accurate? He leaves his body in the other location, experiences another body in a further location, and then when that body goes to bed, this will leave and experience another one. It is on and on because it is photon interacting with photon, electron interacting with electron, atom interacting with atom, in this massive infinity of existence. You know what it's called? When he leaves his body here, then goes here, then goes here, then goes there, but he's still the same Charles. It's called singularity. Nassim Haramein addressed this as 64 tetrahedron singularity. I'm going to show you a picture of you and me and Charles. There it is. That's you, that's you, that's you, that's you. It replicates itself. And it replicates itself. It's what the tetrahedron does. It's what the 64 tetrahedron does. It replicates itself. But even all the way out to infinity, it's exactly the same as the one here. Let us consider the smallest star tetrahedron as Charles. It duplicates itself, but it's always the same. In other words, it's singular. It will never change. It will always be the same. That's why I remember Max Tegmark at Massachusetts Institute of Technology said there's a person somewhere, many persons with the same name you have, the same friends you have, the same family you have, doing the same things you're doing. Singularity. So we consider Charles's body. The body stops, but the force which is Charles inside the body moves into a parallel body which is created by the 64 tetrahedron. It is the tetrahedron which is the form in invisible space. Now, let us look at Nassim Haramein's words, which I have changed ever so slightly to make a point. Known in esoteric knowledge as the Merkaba, or Merkaba, light, spirit, body, the configuration of the star tetrahedron is formed within the first 8 cells of life. You can't even argue that at this point now, because inside of you is the 64 star tetrahedron. It forms within the first 8 cells of life. It remains fixed at the base of the spine, and it did so throughout Charles's life and your life. The star tetrahedron also models the energetic body of Charles, the blending of heaven and earth, male and female. It's ubiquitous throughout nature because the 64 is the structure of the invisible. Where we think space is empty, there is the tetrahedron, and you have one inside of you. Or you may have many, I don't know. Now let's do something here. We know it self-replicates, we know it duplicates, and we're talking about all this wild stuff about you being here and there and here and there, everywhere. Impossible to die. If we can find the tetrahedron in the first 8 cells, then knowing it is there, we can be more positive about what we're discussing concerning the repeated duplication of ourselves. There are many dimensions, and that's what this is about. Anyway, we have to prove that those 8 cells, or the first 8 cells of life, are there. And then we'll know, as the tetrahedron replicates, we'll know without a doubt that everybody you thought was dead is not only not dead, but you're talking to them right now. You have a special love, a mother, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, a child, a friend, whatever it is. Right now, somewhere, you're sitting down to dinner with them. Bruce loaned me, he's not here now, but he loaned me a book. And the funny thing was, I said, Bruce, I really don't have time to read any books now. And I do appreciate it. And he insisted. I said, all right. But I said, all right, give me the book. He gave me the book. This is the book. The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. And I said, Bruce, I don't know when in God's name I'm going to get a chance to read it. But I thumbed through it before I fell off to Wonderland on the couch. And on page 189 and 190 of this book, that Bruce forced me to take, I found what we needed. Here you'll see the downward triangle of the Star of David, or the tetrahedron. This is what we would call, for lack of a better word, God coming into us. This is the second part, the physical part of us looking up or coming in contact. And then the star tetrahedron is when that which is the higher, which has entered the body, connects to the lower. Let us take a look at the first 4 cells of your life. The very first 4 cells that happened in your body when you were a fetus. There they are. Do you see it? The first 4 cells form a tetrahedron. So here we have that coming down. We got to get this coming up in there. So we got to get the star tetrahedron to replicate. Let's look at the completion of the 8 cells. And there it is. Can you see it? The Merkaba, star tetrahedron. That is in your body. And it replicates itself. It is ready to take you anywhere in the universe. You know, the funny thing is, we don't know what the hell we're talking. We listen to all these crazy people. Go in and talk to the pastor about the star tetrahedron in his body. They have no idea. So here we've proved it. Because you're looking at the cell. You're looking at the tetrahedron. It's in your body. Now, we have scientific proof of the tetrahedron as the initial force of human creativity. This is what Nassim Haramein said from the beginning. Everything is based on that. That's your first 4 cells. Before anything of you, this is the first thing that happened inside of you, and this is the next thing that happened inside of you, which is the 64 star tetrahedron. And what is Thoth of the emerald tablet holding in his right hand? The star tetrahedron. Why? Because it's you and me. It's all life. As far as you may go out into the universe. It's what it is. The God of 8, from the city of 8, reporting to the commander of 8, holds that which makes you you. And in addition, he holds the cross and the single eye, which is connected to the commander, who we call Jesus, whose number in Greek is 888. So we're talking about the continuation of life, the self-replicating of our cells, the replicating of Charles. In other words, the tetrahedron geometric pattern in the quantum field replicates and duplicates itself constantly all over the universe. That's you and me. There are many of each of us, and that's why we think it's a dream. Okay? In different locations, and it's different people each time. We are many, and we are active, and that's why when you dream, you have so many different experiences and meet so many different people that you never knew before. It's called entropy. Watch this one. Entropy. The tendency for all matter and energy in the universe to evolve toward a state of inert uniformity. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out. That 8-star tetrahedron in you does not need any help from within you. It does not need any help from without. It alone can create complex crystals from simple shapes. And this is from Science Daily. And the study elevates the role of entropy, which is the self-perpetuating in creating order. University of Michigan. Certain pyramid shapes tetrahedron can spontaneously organize into complex quasi-crystals. See? Inside of you, that geometric cell replicates itself over and over again, and that's how you can be here and there and everywhere. Change takes place totally on its own. That's the nature of life. That's the nature of tetrahedron. So you have life, which is atom and cannot be destroyed, in the patterns of tetrahedron, which replicates itself, which means that the instant that Charles's body shut down here, he was active in another self with no knowledge whatsoever that he had died. In fact, he may be in his green pickup truck going to Hidden Meanings right now. You know, I'll tell you something, honestly, that kind of talk that I'm talking now always turned me off in my earlier years because there was never any substantive information to back it up. You have sat here and seen the tetrahedron cells in your own body. You don't need any faith. You can go and watch it under a microscope. It's a fact. Changing our bodies and changing our experiences just like you change your pants over and over and over. For those of you who really get into this and study it and want to continually study and for, make it easier for you, I'm going to give you a website that I feel is one of the better ones I've run across, and one that I think will fascinate you about this material. This is the website, www.johngowan.org. www.johnagowan.org. johnagowan.org. This is a bit on the background of John Gowan. You're going to see a picture of him, and he looks like somebody that you'd see at the local pub, but he's in his 70s now, and I guess he didn't want to use the old picture. But anyhow, this is a bit of his background, and I find it fascinating, and I love it. I know this is what Charles really loved, and anyhow, John Gowan. John Gowan is retired from Cornell University after 25 years working in the biological sciences. He now writes on general systems, gravity, unified field theory, on topics ranging from cosmology to Teilhard-de-Chardin to the fractal organization of nature. He finished his education at Cornell, majoring in general agriculture. He also worked for the departments of entomology, ecology, and systematics and floriculture, all at Cornell as a research technician. Go on to the next one, John. His late father, Dr. John C. Gowan, was a well-known author and researcher and professor of education at University, Northridge in California. His remarkable books developed synthetic unified theories of human development and psychophenomena. And this is what John Gowan says: I am not especially anti-establishment, but I am healthily suspicious of it. And I resist being swallowed whole by it. I have always enjoyed freedom of thought. The penalty for this choice has traditionally been the silencing of one's voice in the establishment press. With these pages, I raise my voice among my fellows, hoping to be heard above the general. Now, this is the first thing that I noticed in John Gowan's writings was something similar to what I do in my work. And what he does is to take a religious symbol and convert it to a scientific principle where it can then become rational thought. Now, earlier we talked about entropy, which works within the geometric pattern of tetrahedron, and it creates additional patterns without any help. In other words, a change takes place, okay? Something happens within you. You might feel differently, but something changed. And this is how John Gowan discusses it. Now, he can get a bit beyond us sometime with his technical thing, but if we take our time and ponder these things, I think we can come away with a general understanding. And this is what he says. Now, we've studied entropy just a minute ago. Entropy, especially in its temporal mode, that means earthly life, corresponds to the physical principle of change and evolution and to the third person of the Christian Trinity, the Holy Spirit. Isn't that interesting? In other words, the Holy Spirit is the activation of the 64 tetrahedron. I feel something coming over me. It's the Holy Ghost. No, it's the 64 tetrahedron. Get behind me, Satan. And John Gowan says, if we simply considering the most general case of converting free to bound energy, such as the absorption of a photon by the electron shell of an atom. We've studied that, so I'm not going to get into that now. We need only take into account the conservation of raw energy and its entropy. In other words, which is to say, mass and momentum. You have something that is going how fast? Mass and momentum. But the entropy takes place when the mass and momentum is experiencing gravitation and time. And then he says in the last line, these are the two internal lines of the tetrahedron model. Now, we miss Charles. We miss others who have slipped into different dimensions, and we're trying to make some common sense out of what happened. But here, Gowan compares this entropy, this change that takes place with our religious connection to the Holy Spirit. I am born again. I'm a new person. All things have become new. Well, all of this kind of stuff is because of entropy. Something happens. A change takes place totally on its own. But we're considering the evolution of a person to a new dimension based on the H-star tetrahedron. And this is what Gowan says. And in the second paragraph, he says, the photon is free. It is part of the universal whole. We discussed that with John Gribbins in wave function, if you remember. Let's take a look. The four principles of the tetrahedron model, conservation of energy, okay, entropy, self-replication, conservation of symmetry, casually, are as much spiritual principles of divine law as they are scientific principles of natural law. This is another example of the convergence or the coming together of physical and scientific thought and metaphysical, spiritual, or religious thought. And this is what we have done here for the entire time that I've been here, is to try to say, what are these people talking about in this, what seems like hocus pocus, and then find out what they're referring to as Holy Spirits and angels and everything is actually quantum, photon, electron, atom. That's what they're talking about. And that's what he's talking about. So the tetrahedron in Thoth, the principle of the eight-sided pyramid, Jesus is 888, all these things as tetrahedron, we begin to find as part of our creative replication to our eternal lives, our eternal existence. In discussing death after life, I'm not going to put this on the screen, I want to do it kind of quick, but I wanted you to just stay with me. Just watch me now for a minute. He says, John, what about death? He says, instinctively, my basic reaction is, why worry? Because what will happen, and I can't do anything about it. The universe is going to do with me whatever it does. But since the universe has already shown its tendency in this regard, in that it has, without my asking or my worry or my consent, as far as I know, put me here, put me in this present life, in this present existence, the odds are, it seems, that they're overwhelmingly favorable that the universe is going to do what it has done before again. Why not? It's become apparent that life is something that the universe brings forth as an emergent property of information for itself, atomic, dimensional, and so forth. The more we learn about the universe, it seems the more that it brings forth life, doesn't it? Jesus, we learned about computers, all of a sudden we got internets all over the place. Our whole life is different, completely different than it was before. In other words, the universe is saying, come on, people. Look at this stuff. Study, will you? Get on with it. I want to improve Earth. I want to do something. And this is what he winds up. He says, in other words, the outrageously improbable existence of my present life is the best evidence I have for the next and or previous life, which by the same argument was and will not be greatly different from this one. Although the factor of personnel, biological, and evolution has to be taken into account. The eternal I does not remember. I don't remember. You don't remember. But it grows with each life experience, as Charles did, and it evolves with the universe. You, me, I, and the universe are one. He says we share the eternal life with all things in the cosmos, but the particular physical body in which it manifests and imposes something upon us and gives us a separate identity, doesn't it? Huh. And so then he says, where and when does the next life occur? He says, well, we don't know and it doesn't matter. Where did the previous life occur? Who the hell knows? Doesn't matter. Maybe elsewhere, maybe elsewhere, who knows? In the multiverse. It simply happens just as this life happened. You're all sitting here in this room. What did you have to do with being here? Nothing. You don't even know how you got here. And then he says, though through us the universe experiences love and beauty and new forms of creativity. And you know what the universe enjoys because we are replicating? It enjoys symphonies. It enjoys sunsets. If there was nobody here, what good is the sunset? Who the heck's going to see it? It enjoys rocket ships and love and life and all of these things. And all because the universe has to better know itself. And he winds up, he says, it's simply inconceivable that my life experience should be wasted on me alone and obliterated and rendered meaningless by death without somehow serving the larger cosmos. And the best way to do this is by this life experience informing me, or the next life experience, by enriching the general self-knowledge of the universe. This is so meaningful to me when I think of Charles, because he went out so much higher than when he came in. And I just wanted to conclude this by John Gowan. I think that we are part of the universe, part of its evolutionary venture of self-discovery. We cannot escape the universal principle of conservation, even if we wanted to. Is there life after death? We should ask instead, is there a universe after our death? Of course there is. And we will continue to be part of it, just as we have always been part of it. Biological death is necessary so that biological evolution may occur. But our identity transcends biology. Even the least elementary particle, the electron, bears a strictly